And welcome back, everybody, to the Podcaster Nation. That's right. I said welcome back because I know you were just listening to our stuff and you loved it so much you wanted to come back for more. Folks, that was a brilliant idea. Fantastic decision. The reason is because we have a lot more for you. Now, why do we have so much more for you? It's because this is the podcast that's about podcasters, it's for podcasters, and it's done by podcasters. And our guest today, wait for it, is a podcaster. That's right. You guys cracked the code. I told you were brilliant. Folks, this is the place where we come together to rise each other up. This is the place where the rising tide truly raises all ships. So let's get sailing with our unbelievably special guest today. If you can, you know I'm a minimalist when it comes to podcasting, all of you listeners out there. So imagine, if you will, that there's trumpets playing in the background and that we've just rolled out the red carpet. Please welcome to the show the host of this podcast you might have heard of before, School of Podcasting. That's right. That's right. Please welcome to the show, Dave Jackson. Dave, legend. How are you doing today, brother?
Rory, I'm doing great. It's Friday night and I'm going to be talking podcasting and like it just doesn't get much better than that. So I'm ready to go.
I appreciate it. You know, when you jumped on and scheduled this, I was so pumped that you scheduled it for the end of my day on a Friday because I just been looking forward to talking to you all day.
Nice.
So
Beautiful. Likewise.
really appreciate you coming on. Normally, I will, throw it to the guest and just say, "Hey, tell us, who is Dave Jackson?" Everybody knows that already. So I would say, go ahead and if you want, just give us your story, brother. How'd you get started in this crazy field of podcasting that we're all in and we all love so much?
Yeah, I had my background's in teaching. And so I taught a lot of Microsoft Office and QuickBooks and time management and customer service. And at the time, I was building websites with Microsoft Front Page back in the day. And
Wow.
I had made this site for musicians. And so I knew, and one guy was really into marketing. And he had gone to this big marketing conference and he came back and he said, "Hey," and again, this makes me sound like I'm 4 million years old. He goes, "Remember how you missed the MySpace boat?" And I'm like, "Yeah, don't rub it in." He goes, "I've just seen the next big thing." And I go, "What is it?" And he goes, "Podcasting." And I went to Google and I typed in podcasting, and there was 1.5 pages of results. And I go, "Wait, how do you spell this?" And he's like, "How do I POD casting?" And I'm like, "Okay, 1.5 results." And I was like, "I think we broke the internet." I go, "There's nothing on this." He goes, "It's brand new. It's coming." And so over the years, I had seen MySpace and I had seen all this stuff, and I go, "Oh, I should jump on that. Oh, I should jump on that." And then I wouldn't. And I was like, "You know what? I'm going to jump on this," because they were saying podcasting was going to be hot and membership sites were going to be hot. And I had done neither. And I just remember lots of Google searches. And I remember this is like you're doing it literally by hand. You're almost writing code and stuff. And I'm not a code writer, but I was like, all right, I can figure this out. I got the internet. And I remember when I finally had this archaic piece of software called Juice. It had a big picture of a lemon on it. And I had, put together this RSS feed and I uploaded an MP3 file and I fired up the software and all of a sudden I saw my episode show up and I was like, "Oh, wait, hold on. Okay, now I see what this thing does." Because I really was like, I don't get it. And then I just remember I turned my blog for musicians into a podcast because I'd already been putting audio on the internet, but there was no syndication.
Right.
And even that, I remember somebody said, "This is cool. You've gone from being words on a page to a person." So I already knew the power of audio. But when I put the RSS feed up in probably, I don't know, a couple weeks, maybe a month, I get a voicemail from Michael Van Laar from Nuremberg, Germany. And I just gone through bankruptcy. I was living in my brother's basement. My brother's standing behind me, and I go, "Wow, I got some sort of voicemail." And I click on it, and I hear, "Hello, Dave. This is Michael Van Laar from Nuremberg, Germany." And I hit stop, and my brother goes, "Did he say Germany?" And I go, "Yeah." And we just sat there over and over. "Hello, Dave. This is Michael Van. Hello, Dave. This is Michael." It's just playing it over. I'm like, I don't, because I'm in the middle of nowhere, Ohio, and some guy on the other side of the planet not only found my show, but likes it. And I was like, okay, I just grabbed my flag. "I hereby claim podcasting in the name of Dave," and been doing it ever since.
My goodness, what a what a start. Now, School of Podcasting, was that your first show or you had a show before that?
Yeah, my
What'd you
very
start
first.
with?
Yeah, my very first show went through three branding changes. It started off, it was the musician cyber cooler, because back then, boys and girls, the internet was known as cyberspace. And then
Right.
cyberspace kind of became synonymous with cyber sex. And I was like, okay, we got to lose the word cyber out of here. So it was the musician's cooler, where musicians come to trade advice, and it had a big picture of a water cooler on it. And yet people still said, so like a wine cooler? Like what is this? And I was like, okay. So I changed it to the marketing musician, and finally people went, oh, okay. So that's when I kind of learned, maybe not so much with the cute names and things like that. But yeah, I did that. That was in April, and then the School of Podcasting came out 6 months later. And that was just one where I was freaking out because I kept interviewing my heroes. Because like the bass player from Quiet Riot and Ozzy Osbourne had a book, and I was like, "Hey, Rudy Sarzo, you want to come on my show?" And he's kind of like, "What's a podcast?" I'm like, "It's like an internet radio show." And he's like, "Sure." And I'm like, "Sure, sure, like okay." So that was kind of freaking out. And then I had decided to go back to school, and I was like, I need something to keep me in car and insurance and phone, right? My brother was nice enough to let me live in his basement while I went back to school. And I was like, I need to make money. And so that's when I was like, well, I'm going to open up this membership site thing. I don't know. It was funny. When I first opened it, I'm not making this up. The original fee was $2 a month. And I was like, and then I raised it to five, ooh, I more than doubled my price. And I just thought, man, if I could get 500 people to give me $5 a month, that'll be great. And you need a friend to tell you the truth. So Marcus Couch was a friend of mine, and he was a podcaster. He's like, "Hey Dave, I saw your site and everything looks cool." He goes, "Can you tell me anything of value that you can buy on the internet for $5?" And I go, that's boy, that's a good question. Anything that's $5 is going to be, some sort of plastic crappy thing or whatever." He goes, "Exactly." He goes, "You have a perception problem." He goes, "Because," he goes, "I get it. You're going for, quantity, not quality here." He goes, "But nobody's going to buy anything for $5." And so I raised it to 20. And that was weird because I instantly got more people. But my business plan was, you'll make a podcast, and then your friends will go, "Hey, where'd you learn how to podcast?" And you'll point people at me. And I was like, "Oh, this would be great." Well, people would pay me $20 and then do nothing. Like literally, I had some people, but a lot of people are just like, "Yeah, I'm getting around to it." And so I was like, "Well, that's weird." And somebody said, "Oh yeah, you're not charging enough. You got to be at least, $80, whatever." And I was like, "Well," and I'm cheap. So for me, $50 is a lot of money. So I went up to 50, and that's when it finally started, like people would sign up and actually make a podcast. So it was, the beginning was why I was also, I was playing in a band on a regular basis. I was building websites for people. I had the school of podcast. I was doing anything I could, guitar lessons, to make money while I was going back to school to get my teaching degree, because my original degree was in electronic engineering, and I had fallen into training and did that for 10 years. And then I went to uh, get a job. That job fell through, and they're like, "You don't have a teaching degree." And I'm like, "No, but look at my resume." And they're like, "Yeah, we can't talk to you without a piece of paper."
Right.
So yeah, so that was fun.
I even said this to you in our pre-interview real quick. I knew you'd be giving out little pieces of advice throughout the entire thing because I just don't think you can help yourself. And I think it's wonderful. But
That's
that's such
just
a
the way
big
I'm
thing.
wired.
Yeah, it's such a big thing in terms of what you charge for your services, but versus the mindset. And when you start talking to podcasters about monetization, I all they want is just a little something to come in to make all this time worthwhile. Just cover my expenses. Just if I could make a couple bucks. And like you're talking about, some people are almost desperate to get a little something in, right?
Well,
Um,
yeah.
and somehow
I,
you still have to have the mindset of I got to charge a lot, you know, or what I'm
well, and
worth.
the yeah, and it's funny because I was trying to do exactly what I coach people not to do, which is, I need to make money now. And I'm like, well, you don't monetize a podcast. You monetize an audience, and congratulations, you don't have one. And so it takes a while. And in fact, even for me, it probably took like 3 years before, I would go to people and go, have you ever thought of starting a podcast? And the number one answer was, "What's a podcast?" So, 20 minutes later, I've explained what one is, and they're like, "Yeah, I don't want to do that."
Right.
So it's, the person that calls me up and goes, "Yeah, I hate my job. I want to start podcasting and quit my job in, 6 months." And I'm like, "Probably not going to happen. Like, what kind of following do you have? What do you mean following? Okay, yeah, it's not going to happen in 6 months." So it's
Right.
and then sometimes I feel like, I should have the title Dave Jackson Dream Crusher, and I'm like, I'm not really trying to, but I got to be realistic here.
I love that. I love that. And we can definitely talk more about, that sort of thing as we move forward here. The school of podcasting, though, in case there is somebody out there who has not, listened to podcast, who doesn't know what that is, maybe they're brand new to our, field and area. Um, Tell us what that is. What exactly is School of Podcasting? What do you do there? What can people expect?
Yeah, if you want to start a podcast in the right direction, you simply go to schoolofpodcasting.com. We've got step-by-step courses. So probably the most important one is planning your podcast. And I've had people that have been podcasting for years. They come in and they're like, "Where should I start?" I go, "I know it sounds weird. Go back and take the planning your podcast." And they're like, "Oh man, I'm like doing this all wrong." And I'm like, "Well, that's why I know." A lot of people are like, "No, no, I know what I'm doing. I've been doing this for 3 years." I'm like, "Well, then why are you here? Like, if everything's going great, So you've got the courses and an amazing community. It's Friday. One of my favorite things is every Friday we do lunch with Dave. And we've got college professors, we've got ex-pastors, we've got dog groomers. I mean, it's just amazing, this group of people. And we all have the same goal, which is make content that's going to leave our audience, give them exactly what they want, make engaging content. And we're, very polite, but there are times when we ask the hard questions and you're like, "Oh, I never really thought about it that way." So you have an amazing community there. That's, Friday we're excited because we get together live, but all during the week we've got a community there that we talk to each other. And then you have unlimited coaching with me, and people are like, "Oh, okay, Dave, what's the catch? That's too good to be true." And it was just simply that, I mean, you can still hire me as a consultant. Go to schoolofpodcasting.com/schedule. But I found out that my quote high ticket item here in quotation marks was not that high ticket. By the time I knocked on doors and answered, 6 questions for free, and then did that and finally got someone to hire me for an hour where I would answer every question they had, and then they would leave and I would never hear from them again. I was like, man, I really miss the ongoing coaching. And I was like, and I'm spending a lot of time, answering questions and all this other stuff. I'm like, this is dumb. I have people in front of me. They're giving me money. Why don't just coach them? And so I raised my price again. I'm like, okay, because this is probably going to cut out some of that consulting money, but and I also know it doesn't scale, but let's jump off that bridge when we get to it. And so I just started doing that, and lo and behold, yeah, some of my consulting went down, but also people now stick around the School of Podcasting. I just had a guy a couple months ago and said, "Hey, my yearly subscription was up. I just want to let you know." I didn't even blink an eye about sticking around for another year. And I'm like, well, that's kind of the whole point. So, because when I was teaching in a university, because when I was teaching in the business world, same thing. You'd teach maybe one or two classes and then they'd be gone. And I got to teach at a university for a while, and that was the coolest thing, having people for months. And at the end, you really knew them, and you were kind of bummed when the semester was over. So I was like, I kind of like that, and I just like people to stick around, and that way you get to see them grow. I remember I had a woman from Florida that called me up and said, "I want to start a podcast, but I hate technology and I'll never do it." And then, months later, yeah, great attitude. And then months later, she calls me up crying because she's in Apple. And I'm like, "Marcy, what's going on?" She's like, "I'm in Apple." And I'm like, "Yeah, I remember yesterday I walked you through submitting it." And you're like, "I'm in Apple. And I'm like, "What's?" And she's like, "I told you I couldn't do it. You said I could do it. And I did it. I'm in Apple." And I'm like, it's hard to explain, but that just puts so much gas in my tank. Like, I like money, but that really was like, oh wow, this is, I love that. I remember once I was teaching PowerPoint, and there was a woman that was like 8 months away from retiring and started crying learning PowerPoint. And I'm like, okay, first things first, this is like the easiest software ever. And I taught her how to play solitaire. And I'm like, there you go. You have mouse skills. And she goes, what are mouse skills? And I go, you can move the mouse wherever you want it to go. She's like, okay. And I go, so I'm going to say things like, click on the file menu. And I go, when I do, click on the file menu. And at the end of the class, she was like, I didn't think I could do this. and this is fun. And I was like, there you go. So that's the kind of stuff that really puts gas in my tank.
Nice. I love that. Um, okay, so that's the School of Podcasting. The community
Yeah.
that's in there seems to be a very big deal from people that I know that are part of this. And is that kind of what you credit to keeping people involved, for as long as they stay with you?
Yeah, it's really weird because I have in some ways my competition is part of the School of Podcasting, but I love that Chris Stone from castahead.net is way more into video than I am. I mean, I can get you up and going and, get you going, but if you really want to get into video, um, Chris joined. David Hooper's in there, who's I've known for 20 years. And then Chris must have talked about it. And one of his friends and one of my friends is Jeff C., who does a lot of video. He's the producer for Guy Kawasaki. And so he's there, and I'm kind of like, Jeff, what are you doing here? Like you don't. He's like, well, I've heard the community is pretty cool. So it's one of those things where when I was growing up, my mom was like the best, and we had a pool table and a ping pong table. And so I would go to work as a grocery store guy and come home, and half my friends are in my house. And I'm like, hey, I'm not here. What do you got? And they're like, oh, where's your mom's? Like, this is the cool house to hang out with, and your mom's the best. And so I'm trying to make the School of Podcasting like the cool house to come hang with.
The cool house. I love that. All right. Yeah, and that's what I mean. The community is definitely something that I've heard
Yeah.
about in our podcasting community. So congratulations on building such a successful thing. That's just, it's really incredible.
Well, and the beauty of it is I've had no idea what I was doing the entire time. I just was like, well, let's try this. Oh, okay. That didn't work. Oh, let's try that. Let's try. Oh, okay. And then I'll just go like right now I'm kind of learning some stuff about community because I'm trying to build a community at the day job, and that is going just horrendously right now. I'm just like, okay, this Facebook group, like everybody, give me the paddles, pull, just trying to breathe some life into this thing. So, you try and fail quick and move on. So,
It's, I love it. I mean, you are kind of an authority on this, though. You wrote a book, Profit from Your Podcast, Proven Strategies to Turn Your Listeners into a Livelihood. Um, what made you write the book? Who's the book for? And what can people expect to get out of that?
yeah, I had written a book before it called More Podcast Money because it's funny, as many people say, oh, I do it for fun and I'm just, hanging out with my buddy. And then 7 months later, they're like, I'm not making any money at this thing. So
Right.
I had put together this book and I gave it to an editor and they said, okay, which one of these books did you want to write? And I go, no, it's the book. And they're like, no, you have like 5 books here. You have planning, you have launching, you have growing. And I'm like, well, everybody's asking about money. So let's do the money one. And so I wrote More Podcast Money myself, and it had just gotten old in the tooth. And it was funny. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to redo this. Because originally I was going to like try to update it. And then it was like, you know what? It's time to just take it out behind the barn and start from scratch. And so I started putting it together, and I got approached because of my podcast by a publisher. And they're like, we would like you to write a book on monetization. I'm like, well, funny you asked. I'm working on one right now. And so they were the ones that came up with Profit from Your Podcast. And so who it's for, it's that person that I always kind of have like one little tear come out of my eye when I hear somebody say, well, I would like to make money with my podcast, but I don't have any sponsors. I heard that over and over and over. And I was like, kids, there are more ways than sponsorship to make money. And so that was the book. I was like, look, I made a 4-figure check. It was funny. Jillian Michaels, the trainer from the Biggest Loser,
Oh, yeah.
she was on The Biggest Loser. She quit, started a podcast, did very well, and then went back to The Biggest Loser. And everybody was like, hey, what happened to the Jillian Michaels podcast? And I was one of those. And I was like, huh, because God bless Jillian, she'll put her name on anything. So I started the Jillian Michaels fan cast. So when people search for Jillian Michaels, they found me. I explained to them that I'm not Jillian Michaels. But I would read her blog. I basically politely, in a non-violent way, stalked her and then would just talk about what she's up to and she's working on a book and blah, blah, blah. And she came out with a new audiobook, or she came out with a book. And it was the first time she had read her own book. And it was on Audible. And every time somebody bought that book, I got $15. And so the fact that it was her first book, and I had a decent audience because people wanted to talk about Jillian. And I remember when the affiliate check came in, it was over $1,000, and I was like, "What? This is possible?" So there's affiliate marketing, there's, selling your own stuff. I always tell people if you buy that book from me, I make like 12 bucks. Now, if I had, the make money from day one kind of ads, you're going to make maybe $5 per 1,000 downloads. Well, that's 2,400 downloads. So which one is easier to do? Get 2,400 downloads or sell one book? And I was like, for me, it's the book all day long. So it
Yeah.
just was, and I've got people in there like Jonathan Oakes from Trivia Warfare that just has an amazing Patreon example and crowdfunding and how that works and how to sell courses. And just there's like 7 different ways to make money. It's just not ads. And people always go, which is the best one? I go, no, no, it's not which one. Do them all. I did a graph last night for somebody and I saw where, affiliate was like, I don't know, 7% of my income. And the membership, the School of Podcasting was like 65%. But there are other things like I am a GoDaddy reseller. So you can buy domains from me and it's not, the profit margin is not much, but it's only $100 a year to do that. And I more than make that. And that's like 3% of my income now is people buying domains. And back in the day of WordPress, they could buy WordPress hosting through me and all this other stuff. So it was like, huh. And that just came from having people go, okay, I guess I need a domain. Where should I buy one from? And I was like, well, I could send them to Namecheap and get my affiliate payment for that for the purchase, but I could also just sell them a domain from me for basically the same price. And now, a bigger chunk of that money's coming my way.
Interesting. All right. So, I mean, you're talking affiliate marketing and everything. Is this all in the
Yeah,
book? Is
yeah,
this
it's
all
all
stuff
there.
from the book?
Yeah, from selling your stuff. Affiliate marketing is selling other people's stuff. And then you
Right.
have crowdfunding. So the Patreons, I like Supercast a little better, but Patreon was there first. So we were all going to call it Patreon. Then you've got ads. If you've got, the big, you don't have to have the 10,000 downloads. Like I've had a microphone, I've had a microphone manufacturer, I've had Focusrite as a sponsor. And I'm nowhere near 10,000 downloads for the School of Podcasting, but I had the audience that they're trying to get to. So you can get ads that pay pretty decent. And then you have the programmatic ads. So that's what I call podcast welfare when it's, $3 per 1,000 downloads. I'm like, really? And then there are things like donations. I had somebody give me 30 bucks last month. Why? Because they really liked the episode. I didn't even ask. They're just like, hey, I saw your buy me a coffee thing. I bought you 6 coffees. I hope you're thirsty. And I was like, thank you very much. So
Nice.
there's all sorts of different ways. And then, if you can, once you get a little bit of traffic, you can be an Amazon affiliate. And there's always that one time when somebody will go buy, baby formula and a big screen TV. And you're like, wait, what? What? Where did I get this 80 bucks from? So, and pennies, I had one today. I forget the name of the product, but I made $4. Like my affiliate payment for the month was $4. Okay, well, 2 Mountain Dews maybe,
Right.
but pennies make dollars the last time I checked. So it's all of those things. I just say, just picture your wallet as a big pool, and the more hoses you can get filling that thing up, it doesn't matter if it's a trickle or a fire hose, the more the merrier, and the more money ends up in your wallet or your purse.
I love that. It's not which one, it's do them all.
Yeah,
Put it all together.
yeah.
That's that's absolutely great. Um, all right,
Well,
I
and
love that.
and and before we move off that, the book came
Yeah.
about because of my podcast. And what's interesting is once I got the book, then I started getting speaking gigs. I don't know what the correlation is with, oh, let's go find a speaker who's got a book. And then they found the book and that led to the podcast. I've, before there was podcast movement, there was the New Media Expo, and it was like the show for blogging and YouTube and everything was huge. And I got asked to be, this sounds like humble brag theater at this point, but I got asked to be the head of the podcasting track because this is before I worked at Libsyn, but the main owner of that event called Spreaker, Blueberry, and Libsyn and said, who do you think we should hire to head up the podcast track? And they all said Dave Jackson. And why? Because they'd all been on my show. So that paid nicely. Once I got my money, that guy that was running it ran that event right into a wall.
Oh,
And yeah, it was so I got to do it for 1 year, which was great. But it's one of those things again where podcasting leads to relationships and relationships lead to opportunities.
that is so huge. That you said that before. I love that line. I'm glad you just said it right now.
Yes. I,
Um, I mean, because the opportunities really are endless. I mean, your entire story is more opportunities, more opportunities, more opportunities.
well, and you want to be known. It sounds weird. I just heard this one. This was from Greg from RSS.com. He was at an event. He goes, "You're not a podcaster, you're a brand. And you have to figure out what do you want to be known for." And I saw this in action. I was at an event in Cleveland last week, and there's this guy named Jay Acunzo. He's just an amazing storyteller. He's kind of a speaker coach in a way. And I wanted to meet him. And so he got done with his talk, and I just like, "Hey, Jay, that was great." And like little fist bump. And I go, "Great to meet you. I'm Dave Jackson." He goes, "Oh, I'm supposed to meet you." And I go, "Really?" He goes, "Yeah, I was at this thing last night for the speakers." And he goes, Katie Brinkley said, I said something about podcasting, and she said, "Oh, Dave Jackson's here. You should meet him." And about that time, Katie walked by and she's like, "Oh my gosh, it's happening. It's happening. Look at you two are meeting each other." But it's just one of those you want to figure out what you're going to be known for. And then other people will go, "Oh, you need the podcast guy? I got a guy. Go talk to Dave Jackson." And so I'm starting to see that more and more. Like even your intro, which was very nice, but you talk about like, Dave Jackson is a household name. And in my brain, I'm like, "Oh, you have no idea how wrong that is." I just the imposter syndrome just kicks into high gear. And so it's fun when you start to see everything you talk about like actually work. You know what I mean? Like, hey, if you do this, this might happen, and then it does.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a one of the things that people maybe forget or overlook the most, because all anybody looks at is the immediate return. I have so many people who come into podcasting, and before they even have an episode out, they're like, "Hey, how do I get ads? How do,
Right.
how do I monetize? How do I get ads?"
Yeah.
And it's like, well, put out an episode first, and we can talk about it. But until then, and people really overlook the long-term effects of, doing the podcast, building the relationships, and having the opportunities come from that. But it really seems like that is sort of the golden egg of podcasting. Are the
Yeah.
relationships, are the opportunities. And it seems like
Yeah.
that's probably the biggest thing, isn't it?
It really is. And it's something, as we talk about this now, Mike, I really need to do better at this. But I used to really make sure that the last time I talked to somebody as a guest or a host or whatever, like I would just put a thing like follow up with these people in 4 months just to go, "Hey, what's up? Anything new on your side of the glass?" And I used to be able to do that. Well, after 20 years, that list gets longer and longer. But I need to get back to that because that really was a key point where you find out that, "Oh, I'm doing this thing. Have you heard of this new tool?" "No, what's it called?" "Oh, system.io." I'm like, when you go over like, "This is amazing," and I wouldn't have found that, "Oh, I'm thinking about getting a coach." "Oh, I hired this guy," because everybody knows a guy or a girl or whoever, and so that to me is the part that everybody overlooks. I'm going to have this, I'm going to do this interview. This guy's going to bring his 10,000, she's going to bring her 20,000 followers, and I'm going to blow up and make tons of money. Like, okay, that doesn't happen. But if you make that the relationship, it's, when I was at the New Media Expo, I got to hire Pat Flynn to come talk, and he did his infamous Back to the Future thing.
Right.
And so I was at Podfest talking to Mike Wilkerson, who's the membership geeks, and he had been on my show. Pat walks by and I'm like, "Hey, Pat, what's up?" Talking to Pat for a second. Michael Stelzner walks up, who knows Pat Flynn. And Michael, I knew Michael, he's from social media marketing world. And so I knew him and he knew of me, but we never really had a chance to talk. But I got to kind of like, look how much I know about podcasting. And lo and behold, a week later, Michael sends me an email. "Hey, you want to come talk at Social Media Marketing World?" And it's all because of who I know that knew did that kind of thing. And, which is hard because a lot of podcasters are introverts and you just have to kind of get over it in a way. And I laughed when I was at the event in Cleveland last week and just, you get there, I got my name tag and everything, and there's all these people sitting there around, and I found the chair way over there and sat down, and I was like, oh, you're gonna do that, huh? Okay, you're gonna go back to Shy Dave. I'm like, that doesn't work, so I just had to kind of grab myself. All right, here we go. You're gonna go talk to some people whether you want to or not.
That's hilarious. You consider yourself to be an introvert.
It's weird. Yeah, a longtime listener and friend of mine, Shane Whaley, was he had came in from I forget where, Vermont or something. So it was great to see him. And he was kind of in that, like, I don't know anybody here. And I am lucky enough now to where if there's a group of six people, I might know one of them. So I'll go over and say hi to that one person I know, and then be like, oh, this is Steve, and that's Carol, and that's so and so, and you get to meet all these people. And we were walking away after doing that because I introduced them to Shane. And he's like, I thought you were an introvert. I go, oh, dude, I'm such an introvert right now. I'm just pretending I'm not an introvert. And I go, I said, now granted, I'm getting better at it to where it comes more natural. I told him, I said, when I first got here, I was way over there on that chair. I go, I just, you know, I just have to get over with it. And so far nobody's punched me in the face. So that's kind of like a running gag at the school of podcasting, It's like, nobody's gonna punch you in the face. So and there are those awkward times when you're like, hey, what brings you to the show? And they answer and you're like, oh, great, tell me about your podcast. And you're like, ugh, and then but it's usually fairly obvious that, wow, we have nothing in common at all. And you just go, well, hey, it was great meeting you. I'm going to keep moving. Okay, you too. See you. Bye. And, the awkwardness is over in, a matter of seconds and you're on to the next thing.
You're giving away your secrets for people who run into you at Podfest now.
Well, my biggest problem, as you can tell as you listen to me talk, I can be a little ADD. In fact, I can be a lot ADD. And the biggest thing, if I meet you in an event, I'm looking you almost creepily in the eyes because in my brain I'm like, give this person your entire focus. Do not pay attention to the person walking behind them. That's rude. But my brain is like, oh, look, squirrel. Oh, is that, so? And I'm like, no, no, focus. Focus on this person. Do not, and it's hard for me to do that. And I don't know. Oh, I know why. It's just the way I'm wired. But that's the like, I just don't want somebody. Well, I met Dave Jackson, and the whole time he's looking behind me to see if there's somebody better to talk to. And that's not what I'm doing. It's just it's like I need blinders on or something, some sort of glasses to help me focus.
I love that. This is going to become must listening, this one episode, like right before you go on to be a speaker someplace. So, in terms of your speaking career, because I love that has led to that. That's
Yeah.
something I've talked to people about before. That podcasting leads to all these other things. But the as far as your speaking career, do you mainly speak at the podcast events, or have you broken off into other areas of being on a stage? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I spoke. Many of them are podcast or podcast adjacent. Like I spoke at a podcast event for higher education. I've spoken at a medical event. That was one that was just kind of like, okay, and I went up and did my thing. And I've spoken at a church once because they wanted all their members to, maybe start a podcast. That was kind of cool. But most of them are some sort of marketing slash podcasting events. So most of the podcast ones, like I'm at the end of the month, I'm going to be at the Empowered Podcasting Conference in North Carolina.
Yeah.
And that happened because I met Mark Roenick at Podcast Movement. And I kind of follow him now. He's a good guy, does a daily show. And he announced he was doing this event. And so I was just circling him and waiting for him to go, okay, we're looking for speakers. I'm like, here you go. So yeah, I don't get a lot of people like, oh, it must be easy to be Dave Jackson. I'm like, I don't get to speak everywhere. There are plenty of times I put in stuff and I'm like, but I'm Dave Jackson. It's one of those things where all of a sudden your ego comes out, right? And go, don't you know who I am? And it's like, but I do, like, we all have an ego, and that's the one that's why I get really worried about accepting compliments. I'm horrible at it because I'm afraid if I accept the compliment, I will turn into, don't you know who I am? I'm Dave, So I'm like, no, no, we're not doing that. That guy can stay whatever that is, that's not coming out. But when I was married, my now ex-wife would come to a podcast event, and all these people are coming up and like, oh, I love your show. You're so funny. And I'd go, oh, thanks so much, but looks aren't everything. And the guy walks away and she goes, you are horrible at accepting compliments. And I go, I don't know what to say. She goes, try thank you, and I'm like, okay, so it's again that imposter syndrome. And part of me is just like, well, if I start to believe that, I'm the Dave Jackson, that's where that joke comes from, that I'm gonna turn into this monster or something like that. So I'm like, nah, I'm okay. I can hold my own.
Wow. I never would have guessed any of those things about you. I mean, you're a fairly unassuming guy, in the public, of course, just from everything I've
Yeah.
seen about you. But because you're not that big braggadocious, here I am, look at my awards type of guy.
Well, in the music biz, I've met some guys that were, they had drank in their own Kool-Aid, and I'm like, I never want
Uh-huh.
to be that guy. I
Right.
don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be the guy on stage that goes over 10 minutes. Like, I really hate that guy because I'm the guy following, and now I got to figure out how to shorten my presentation because you can't tell time. There are certain things I don't want to be that. I don't want to be that. I don't want to be that. So, and I don't think I have to worry about my ego. It's one of those things where, anytime you start to feel, your head get a little bigger, you're like, oh, let's check that right there. That's enough of that.
Right on. I love your attitude towards it. Very humble, very servant heart,
Yeah.
central. So, but again, I think that's something that people can tell about you from the get-go. You're not out here trying to be, the next huge thing, which is neat and makes you more approachable. But it's probably one of the reasons why you're so successful, brother.
I try. I still, what I never understand this. I've had people that said, "Oh, I remember once I met you well, the first time I saw you, we were in an elevator, and I just felt too nervous to say hi." And I'm like, how can I be more approachable? I've got no entourage. It's just me, and I'm like, so I always tell anytime I'm going to an event, I'm like, if you see me at this event, you absolutely have my permission to please come up and say hello, because for me, I want to meet the people that are listening to my show, because as soon as you say, "Hey, I listened to your show," get back, because I'm going to do an impromptu audience survey and find out why you listen and what I can do better and this and that. So I love it. To me, I'm like, hey, if you want to, for me, I always say you need to know who your audience is. And when you can tell me the eye color of your audience, you're doing the right thing.
Nice. Love that one. I may steal that. Is that okay if I borrow that?
But it's yours, man. There you
Okay.
go.
Appreciate it. All right. Listen, I could probably talk to you about just you and all this stuff all day long. If I don't ask you a couple of actual podcasting questions, I'm going to get
Oh,
DMs
absolutely.
about it. So let me ask you just a couple.
All right.
The you started a long time ago. And so promoting your podcast back then, when the first thing you got from people was what's a podcast,
Right.
to today, where everybody knows what a podcast is, and it seems like everybody wants to start one. Um, what have you found has been the change, and what today is the best way you've found to promote a podcast that's like, the best bang for your buck, best use of your time, that sort of thing?
Yeah, the biggest thing that's changed is like you said, it used to be, you know, what's a podcast? I remember when Apple added podcasting to, iTunes and that whole nine yards. And that's where I've
Mhm.
actually seen a hockey stick growth. All of a sudden my stats went, and I was like, whoa, that's why I'm like, I will never say a bad word about Apple. And in terms of what works, if you think about, I think we're in the movie business. And by that, what I mean, if you look at their business model, they they have an idea what they want to talk about. They talk about it, then they edit it, then they put it, if they're smart, they put it in front of a screening to see if people are laughing when they're supposed to laugh and crying when they're supposed to cry, and are you getting the response from that? 99% of podcasters don't do that. They just ask mom and she goes, "Oh, honey, it's great. Look at you. You're so professional." Right? So they skip that, and that's a problem. And then what do? They spend tons of money to get the word out, and they hope that the people that go see the movie go tell their friends. And so we don't have a big budget, but I had a guy on my show from the Darknet Diaries, and he was getting six-figure downloads. And I asked him, I'm like, "What's your secret?" And he said, "I ask my audience." He goes, "I slowly, specifically, and confidently ask my audience to share it with a friend." And he goes, "But I spent months giving them episodes and going on a scale from 1 to 10. how likely are you to share this with a friend? And he goes, and if I got below a 7, I went back to the drawing board. He does a kind of an NPR style storytelling thing, but it's all about like somebody went to hack into an Xbox and ended up like hacking the Pentagon. These amazing stories, right? But I was like, okay. And so, and I hear over and over that the number one way you grow your audience is through word of mouth. So I do my best to find out what my audience really wants and then slowly, specifically, and confidently ask them to share it with a friend. And that's really it because I don't think social media does much. I know a new study just came out that said social media was like the number one. And I'm like, I bet that's social media that your friend shared something with you. Like, because to me, if my
Yeah.
friend sends me something, I'm going to click it. So I think it's a trusted source that really helps grow it. But it's hard to grow. And we went from nobody could listen to a podcast to then now they have time and they're not listening to radio anymore and they're not doing this. So they're consuming more, but we are starting to hit the point where I'm like, well, I've got my stable of shows. And so when somebody says you should listen to this other one, you're like, either I need to lose one or I'm going to get behind on this one. And so it's a little harder now to grow your show because everybody's got their stable of shows. And either I'm going to quit watching YouTube or I'm going to quit watching whatever the Housewives of Poughkeepsie or whatever to make room to to listen to this podcast. So it's a little harder, but um, that's why I always tell people you have to love what you're talking about because it's not easy. It's never really aside from the Apple thing, and that happened once. It's never been really easy to grow it. It's just a matter of, I always say figure out who your audience is, go to where they are, hopefully if you can physically, um, make friends with them. Because if you don't make friends and just walk into a brand new stranger and go, "Hey, listen to my stuff," that's called spam, boys and girls. And so, and once you say, "Oh, by the way, I talked about this on my podcast," and they go, "Wait, you have a podcast?" "Oh yeah, it's called the School of Podcasting." Blah blah blah. So it's just never ending. Like right now, I have probably 3 business cards in my wallet. So if I run into somebody like, "Oh, here, just so you don't forget it, here's this. There's a QR code on the back of it. If you want to, have that go and put it on your phone, it's super easy." Or in some cases, I will grab their phone and just let me show you how to. To the show. Click, click, click. So it's been
Nice.
a fun ride. Yeah.
Nice. That's you brought up video. There's a seems to be kind of a movement right now. I'm not sure where it's coming from or what segment of our community it's coming from, but
Oh, I know where it's coming from.
where where people are basically saying, hey, the audio version, isn't really, carrying it anymore. So you should just do video. Stop putting your audio out. Just move over to video. Blah blah blah. Because everybody loves video because it's so shiny.
It's
Last time
very
I
shiny.
checked, there's a lot of people listening to podcasts when they're driving cars. So I'm a little, hesitant to get on that, but I wondered what your thoughts were on the audio versus the video and, where to put your time, if you're a podcaster to get the most bang for your buck again.
Yeah, I always say if you have the desire and the budget and the time, do video. YouTube's free. Have fun. But know that YouTube is the company with a really big budget and a really big bullhorn that's saying, my favorite is they went to all the YouTubers, and they said, "Everybody, if you could look at me, please." And they waved their magic wand and they said, "I dub thee a podcaster." And they went, "Really?" And I'm like, "Yeah, did I somehow magically grow an RSS feed?" "No, but don't tell anybody." But you're a YouTuber. And the reason they did that is because TikTok was starting to bite their lunch. It's a big lunch, but when you start taking bigger chunks out, they're like, we got to do something. And so I don't know if it was a meeting or what. And they're like, we got to get people talking about YouTube. What do you got? Larry, what do you got? And Larry's like, oh, podcasting's hot. Brilliant. That's it. All right. Well, tell everybody they're a podcast. So if you want to do it, it's great. But audio outperforms. I'll tell you the Bill Maher story. Bill Maher starts a podcast. I'm only going to do video. And I was working at Libsyn. We're like, Bill, you need audio. Bill's like, okay, fine, whatever. We'll do audio too. Bill hires a publicist who only promotes the video, and the audio outperformed it 15 to 1. Why?
Wow.
Because I can't watch video in the car or while I'm doing the dishes or walking the dog or lifting weights, but I can listen to the audio. But you're not going to hear that from YouTube because they're and plus now my favorite uh video podcasts, we used to call those YouTubers, are blowing up on YouTube. And I'm like, wait, so you just said YouTubers are blowing up on YouTube? I'm like, where else would they blow up on? It's so dumb. But yeah, between YouTube and Spotify, two big companies with big bullhorns and big budgets that just, don't always give you all the facts. I
Gotcha.
don't want to get myself in legal trouble here, but
No, not at all.
My favorite Spotify, you can play music on your podcast. That was the headline. The truth was, oh, by the way, only in the app, not on the website, and only after we approve every episode. Oh, and only for the people that have a paid subscription. Like that's a little different than you can play music in your podcast. So,
Yeah, a little bit.
just a
I,
little bit.
I love that. That's been my opinion. And so, I mean, you just honestly, you just validated everything I've said on that topic. So I
Yeah.
could not be happier with your answer,
Well,
because that's the
I
biggest
also,
thing.
yeah, I also remember when Clubhouse was going to kill podcasting. I remember,
Right.
and it's just, and it's like, oh, this is the new thing. So, which means somewhere in the next 12 months, we're going to get a lot of podcasting is dead because we haven't had that one in a while. That comes up about every 2 years. Podcasting is dead. I'm like, really? And Rob Walsh from Libsyn can go back to like 2006. And then it was like 2008 and then 2010. About every 2 years, it's like, oh, it's done. Bubble's busted. And yet it just keeps on going and keeps on growing.
Yeah, it's on demand. It's consumable whenever and wherever you want, and you can multitask while you're doing it. So, you know
Yeah.
what?
Well,
It's not
and
going anywhere.
I'm a guitar player. And now this is a YouTube channel, but there's a guy named Rick Biano that spent, I don't know, an hour and a half with the lead guitar player of Pink Floyd, who's in his studio showing you exactly how to play, what he was doing, and what gear. I mean, it was like you're just not going to get that on Jimmy Fallon, you know. And
Right.
so, yeah, so it's information you can't get anyplace else. So the nerdy guitar players, and I have a member of the School of Podcasting that does Around the Layout. It's for model train enthusiasts. His community is absolutely just crazy. Like they're just he has like I always tell people, if you ask your audience to do something, maybe 3% will do, the Patreon or the crowdfunding way. He's like 12%. But those people, he's all about community. He's all about, and when he starts talking about model trains, I have no idea what he's talking about because he's talking about different brands and blah, blah, blah. But those people know exactly what he's talking about. So a lot of it is about community, I think, that lends into growing the show as well.
Back to community.
Yeah.
Absolutely. 100%. Let me ask you my corny question that I
Yeah.
like. I try to
All
get
right.
this into everybody on the show. So, what is it about doing your podcast that you love the most? And what is it about doing your podcast that you just absolutely throw it out the window, hate the most?
For me, the thing I love the most is when somebody comes up and says, "Oh, I heard episode whatever, and it helped me do this better." Because again, underneath all of this, I'm still a teacher, and so when I can help somebody get from point A to point B, that just makes me, it makes me giddy, giddy. I tell you, giddy.
Giddy. All
What
right.
do I absolutely hate? Um, the snake oil salespeople around podcasting. I don't really hate anything. There are times I'm not a big fan of show notes. And I've tried AI show notes and I see my problem is I have a brain and fingers. So ideas and typing are not that's not a problem for me. So I kind of, for me, I think I can just type my own show notes. It's not that big of a deal. But I just see people that like Listen Notes is one. Listen Notes is this website, and I heard people. I was moderating a room at a podcast event, and somebody said, "I'm a top 1% podcaster," and I was like, "Oh, that's a Listen Note." Anytime you hear anybody say, "I'm a top blank percent," that's from Listen Notes. And the fun part of Listen Notes is my buddy Steve Stewart is in the top 10%. Well, Steve hasn't had a show out in about 9 years. And I'm like, so you're beating that WordPress show from, 2021 or something like that, or, whatever. So it's a stat, but I just like, wait, if you're a podcast consultant, you should know that that stat really doesn't have that much weight to it, which either means A, you don't know it and you should, or B, you do know it and you're preying on the uninformed, which makes you maybe not a great person. And
Mm.
so that I see stuff like that, or just there are a lot of people, especially on LinkedIn, which drives me crazy. They'd be like, I'd like to contact with you. And I see that they're friends with seven of my other friends. And I'm like, oh, this guy's probably good. No, okay, accept. And then instantly, bing, hey, I can get you to the top of the Apple charts,
Yeah.
and there's just some things. My favorite one is there's a couple companies doing this, but we will put your, we will take your MP3 file from your media host into our player and put it on national publications like Yahoo and People. And I'm like, I don't know. When I think of like top notch, you know, uh, yeah, that's not the two that come to my name. And then I had a guy on my show that admitted basically that kind of setup, not all of them, of course, but at least in his case, he admitted was just junk. They were preloading the MP3 file, so enough to get an IAB certified download because you only need a minute. And then the minute you turned off the campaign, your downloads looked like Niagara Falls and that kind of stuff. I even asked him, I go, who uses your service? And he goes, marketing people that have to verify the thousands of dollars they spent making this podcast to the CEO. He's like, hey, we're spending, 10 grand a month on this thing. What are we getting? Oh, look at all the downloads we're getting. And he's like, great, keep up the good work. And then they turn off the campaign. And I was like, well, okay, that's a thing, you know.
Unless
So
you
that's
pay
the
more, right? Then they keep it going.
yeah, so that's the stuff I hate, but that's, you know, um on occasion I will get like right now I'm working on episode 1000, and for some reason when I say episode 1000, I hear episode 1000 into my head. And so I said I'm going to make this episode about how do you grow a podcast. And so I've done like months of research and stuff, and I just feel like okay, this one has to be good. Like this one, like this is I'm swinging for a home run on this one. Usually I'll aim for doubles and triples because those help people score too. But I was like, no, I want this one to be like this is the one that people go to. So when I find myself in the kitchen at like 11:30 when I should be at my computer typing and, fleshing out my ideas, I'm like, why I'm not hungry. Why am I looking in the cupboards? I'm like, oh, because you're nervous about, expectations and stuff. So I just like, all
Wow.
right, just sit down and, you know, if we go back to humble brag theater, because that's always fun. When I got inducted into the Hall of Fame, the next episode, my brain was just scrambled. Everything I recorded, I'm like, is this Hall of Fame worthiness? And I was like, I don't know. And then finally, it just dawned on me. I'm like, well, they voted you in because you're doing what you do. So just do what you do and quit thinking about it. Just be you. And I was like, all right, I'm just going to go be Dave Jackson. And sometimes that's a little wacky and sometimes it's a little scatterbrained, but somebody likes it. So just keep doing that.
You beat me to that. I was going to bring that up at the end about how you're actually in the Podcaster Hall of Fame. So I
So
love that you brought it up.
one of the few times Dave Jackson has been speechless is Gary Leland called me up and he kind of tricked me. He's like, we're going to need some help with a Hall of Fame because I had inducted some people in previous years. And I'm like, okay, what do you need? He goes, well, we're going to need you to pick up this trophy and make a speech. And I was like, oh, what? He's like, oh, yeah, you're getting inducted this year. And I was like, whoa. I was like, are you sure? He's like, yeah, we're sure. So, yeah, that
Yeah,
was wild.
congratulations on that because that's quite the accomplishment.
Yeah.
And I know you've won some other awards too, Best Technology Podcast, for
Yep.
instance.
Yep.
And the technology was about podcasting then?
Yep. That's for the School of Podcasting. And then I talked to Todd Cochran and apparently you have to pay for the statue. But in 2023, I won along with Alex Sanfilippo and I forget who else, but we're like influencer of the year. And it was weird because the podcast awards were going, and all of a sudden my phone's blowing up. Congratulations, congratulations. And I'm like, I didn't even submit myself to be in the awards. I'm like, what did I win? And they're like, influencer of the year. And I'm like, how did that happen? And they're like, well, people voted you in. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, that's
Wow.
humbling, you know.
Way to
So
go.
yeah, it's but I noticed I saw a picture of Alex from Podmatch holding up his award, and I was like, hey, I never got mine. And Todd's like, oh, I'm sorry, man. He goes, that's an extra award. He goes, if you want to chip in some money for those. But because it turns out they're really expensive. They're really like it looks like, it's acrylic or whatever it is, but it's thick and heavy and apparently lots of money. And I was like, well, I definitely want my award, so I'm gonna fork over some cash.
Just had to pay for it yourself. That's pretty rough.
It's well, it's I would not want to ever do an award show. Todd Cochran over at Blueberry runs the People's Choice Award, and he's had death threats and all sorts of stuff because it's rigged. You gave it to these people, and like, he's like, this is our process. This is how we vet the votes. But yeah, people
Wow.
got really, really. I'm like, yeah, that's because he doesn't make any money on these. That's why you have to pay for your trophy, because the sponsorship's really low, and yeah, there's like a really small. I think you have to pay, I don't know, 10, $15 to be considered, and then all this stuff. So he's obviously not in it for the money. I've seen other
Sure.
awards where it's hundreds of dollars to even be considered.
Right.
So
Death threats over an award. That's pretty rough.
yeah, that
Yeah.
well, welcome to America, where our national pastime is recreational outrage. So that's
Recreational outrage. I'm stealing that one too.
I
All
stole
right.
it from David Lee Ross. So go right ahead.
Okay. Awesome. As long as we're giving credit where credit's due.
That's it. Yeah, I don't want to take credit for that. I wish I
No,
could.
not at all. Listen, I've kept you a long time. I really appreciate everything you brought
Yeah,
here, and you've given so much advice. I even told you in the pre-interview, I knew this was going to happen. I usually end the show and we kind of wrap things up with,
yeah.
asking you for some advice, and you've been given so much. Let me kind of rephrase the last question that we have. As you've been doing podcasting forever, you're an expert. You're a legend. Appreciate everything that you brought to the show today, and it's been just magnificent getting to know you. But the question I usually end with is, what's your best piece of advice? And you can throw out more than one if you need to, for podcasters who are not quite where you are yet.
Yeah, there's two. For the person that's just choking on imposter syndrome, I got fired from my very first real job as a grocery bagger because I was painfully shy. And so the teacher, because I was taking this like business course in high school, and the teacher that got me the job said, you should be like your buddy Scott. Well, my buddy Scott is monkey hour 24/7. He's the complete extra. I'm like, dude, that's like growing a third arm. I can't do that. And he just said, here's what I want you to do. I want you to act the way you want to be, and someday you will be the way you act, which we now call fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
But it worked. And so it's like I say, anytime I look like I'm an extrovert, I'm acting like one. Probably inside of me, there's that. And then the other one is from Zig Ziglar. And people think, well, who would listen to me? And I was like, you don't have to be great to start, but you do have to start to be great. And, I started and I just gone through a bankruptcy. I'd gone through a divorce, living in my brother's basement. I could have sat there and just said, woe is me. And I was like, no, I'm not done yet. I don't know where this is going. And I'm either going to end up with a cool podcast or a cool story about that time when I went to start a podcast. And I've been doing more of that really as I get older, just like, well, the stories aren't in the bedroom, so I've got to go outside and do some stuff because it's those stories that I then go, ooh, I can use that in the podcast and I can use this and that whole nine yards. But you got to get out behind the desk to really live life a bit. And it's those stories that are gonna separate you from AI. I'm telling everybody right now, lean into being human, lean into your craziness, because that's what's gonna set you apart. And with that, I will shut up. Otherwise, I'll keep talking for another hour.
Honestly, I could keep listening to you for another hour. So that's why I figured I better get you out of here because I know you got another appointment after this. But Dave, I love everything that you've brought today, and this is the reason that you have the credibility that you have. It's the reason that people love you. It's the reason everybody wants to listen to you is because you're real. And you're authentic. And I know that word gets beaten to death, but I mean, you really are the guy that everybody thinks you are. Behind the scenes, and
That's
that's awesome.
yeah, probably the best compliment I've ever got was I was at a some sort of event, and this guy said, "Wow, you're like you sound like you do. Like that's your voice." He goes, "But you're just the same guy." He goes, "You're not any different behind the mic as you are on the mic or off the mic." And I go, "Thank you." I go, "Because I'm not, I'm not trying to be Dave Jackson. Hey, what's going, like that's exhausting. So I try to add a little voice inflection, a little salt and pepper here and there, but for the most part, what you hear is what you get.
I love it, Dave. I really do. Thank you for everything that you brought to the show today. Thank you for being on the show. It's been an absolute honor to have you here to ask you these questions and just to get to know you. So, Dave Jackson, everybody, thank you for being on our show, brother.
Thank you, man. This has been great.
All right. Hope you had a good time.
I hope I didn't suck.
Folks, this has been another unbelievable episode of the Podcaster Nation. This is the podcast. It's about podcasters. It's for podcasters, and it's done by podcasters. This is the place, and we definitely showed it today, folks, where the rising tide truly raises all ships. So keep sailing.